All right. So when was it, Jenna Reid, that you knew you had this gift? When
Oh,
did it start for you?
very young, very young. I remember like laying in bed at probably 3 years old, like hiding under the blankets. And my parents would come in and be like, "What's the matter?" Because I'd scream because the spirits like come in your face like this close. And I'd be like, "There's people here, there's people here." And they'd be like, "Oh, honey, it's just your imagination."
Mm,
Because I'm adopted. So my family doesn't have this gift. So
interesting.
spirit sees people who are open to them as like a light on the top of their head. So they'll be like, "Oh, there's someone with a light. I'll get my
They're attracted
message
to it.
through." Yeah, I'll get my message through
Hmm.
because they're waiting to like, they're always around us waiting to give us
Now, is it true
messages.
that when kids are really young, they're much more
Yes.
open, and we kind of like beat it out of them
Yeah.
because I mean metaphorically,
We school them out of it.
because they're like, oh, that's just your imagination, that's
Yeah.
just your imagination. But I mean, again, everything we talk about here has been researched.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of research behind this. This is not woo stuff that
No,
it's there.
it's
I mean,
true.
the
Yeah.
CIA has done research, remote viewing,
Yeah.
all, yeah, this stuff is real. So just as a disclaimer, but with kids, they do see things
Yeah, they do.
more
And we
often.
teach them a way to like conform to society because society like is it doesn't want you to have that connection. Like people just look at that like it's nothing. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
But I think like I raised my kids knowing because sometimes if you're more like I'm no different than you, I don't know why I can do what I do. It's I think everybody has all of these gifts, but for some reason in this life, I chose to have this to use to
Hmm.
help people. But my kids have it too. And I raised them in a house that was very open. Like my son would be like, "Oh, there's a man in the corner." And I'd be like, "Oh, well, what's he wearing? Did you ask him what his name was? Does he
Hmm.
have a message?" And then he started using it because I'm adopted. So I grew up in a non-psychic family. They're both of my parents are really, really smart. They have their like PhDs and doctorates and really smart. So I didn't want them to have the struggles that I did growing up with that. So I've raised them like that. So they know how to use their gifts,
Hmm.
but they choose not to right now. Do you know what I mean? Because
Hmm.
they're teenagers and they want to not be the weirdo
They
at
want to fit
school.
in and not be
Yeah.
like,
And I
okay.
was the weirdo at school. Like I would, even if I didn't say it, it would come out of my mouth and people would be like, "How'd you know that?" And I'd be
Hmm.
like, "Oh my God, it came out again."
Yeah,
Because
because
I tried to block it and just fit in.
there's kind of this everyone has a certain intuition, and so I don't know if you
Yes.
look at it like there's sort of a level, like everybody is, or a majority of people are sort of at this level where they can every once in a while hear from the sixth sense, and maybe they trust it or maybe they don't. It's that
Right.
that thing that like pops in your mind, or you get a vibe or something. And we talk about that quite a bit, about how you'd have to sort of begin to trust that, because that
Yeah.
is important.
Yeah.
But obviously not everyone has the
But
immediate
I
ability
think
that
they
you
do.
have.
I
Yeah.
really think everybody has. I'm not special in any way. I mean, if anything, I'm a weirdo, but everybody has this. And with that, like, if your people are good people and people want the best and they want peace on earth and all of that, our minds and our hearts want to see the good in people, but our gut always tells us the truth. Like
Mm,
you'll want to believe the lie that someone tells you because you love the person, but your gut's going to tell you, nope, that's a lie. And we are need to be trained to listen to your body. Like your body will tell you.
mm,
Like I've been around some not so nice people growing up, and I remember like giving one a hug and just feeling like, oh, I got to get this person away from me. And I didn't know why, but it's my body and my gut instinct, my intuition, my gifts telling me this person is not safe for you.
Hmm.
And I didn't listen. And every time you don't listen to your gut, you end up with a problem, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So now I'll listen to my gut over what anybody else says because I know best for me.
Hmm. And how, how do you approach it? And when you're, and you call it spirit.
Mhm.
So how do things sort of come to you? Is there a certain technique that I mean, it probably comes a lot easier to you
Yeah.
than others, or people pick it up in different ways,
Like before a reading, do you mean?
Sure.
Um, well, before a reading, I do like a meditation to open me up more to spirit. And it's just a little 10-minute meditation.
Mhm.
And I say a prayer, like to thank spirit and everything. And that helps to raise my vibe so that when I start doing the reading and I start talking to the person, I'm reading their energy. So, like, it connects me and just stuff starts popping in my head. And like the average person, and like a lot of my students, because I mentor people with gifts,
Mhm.
they'll always say, like, oh, that's my imagination, or I don't feel any different. And I always say, well, I don't feel different either. But its spirit is so subtle. It's like a very subtle thing that pops in. Like if I'm reading a woman and all of a sudden I see a glass of orange juice, like my job is not to put my Jenna on it and think, oh, what's that about? I don't try to decode it. I'll just say, well, spirit's showing me a glass of orange juice. And then she'll go, that's how I met my husband. He spilled a glass of orange juice on me on our first date. And like, so you think if you put your mind on it, like spirit knows more. Like my job is just to deliver, you know?
Mm.
So if I put my mind on it, I'm always going to be wrong.
Mhm.
So I just deliver. I don't know why I'm seeing this, but this is what I'm seeing.
Hmm. That's
So,
interesting.
but,
So like,
and yeah, and sometimes the reading is more psychic. And sometimes if it's someone who just lost someone they loved, it'll be all mediumship. Sometimes it all works together, like it'll be half psychic and half mediumship.
hmm.
But it's I just trust spirit because my only job is not to be like the best psychic medium or anything. It's just to deliver the messages.
Hmm. And wow, to have that, does that bombard you throughout the day? Or I mean, because you're open to these things, or maybe there are techniques to make sure that you're protected from that. I
Yeah.
mean, this is I had Tariq Pinkston on the program, and he's kind of empathic, and
Yeah.
he was talking about how he needs to sort of put white light around himself,
Yeah.
but when he enters into the room, that sort of thing. But what is that? What is that like for
It's
you?
I do protect my energy, especially if I'm going into like crowds or like a bunch of people or like a big store, because I'll pick up on people's energy. And if it's negative, I'll feel really anxious. And
Mm.
that's how I know, wait a minute, I was fine. Now I'm in the store and I feel anxious.
Mm.
So I do put a bubble around me, but I don't really like close up completely. Like I could talk to a neighbor on the street and something will just come out of my mouth like a psychic thing. And they'll be like, whoa, how'd you know that? And I don't know. Spirit just came out of my mouth, you know? So I feel like spirit kind of controls that because I don't like consciously protect myself unless I'm going somewhere where there's a lot of energy.
Mm.
And I don't like, I'll wake up and just, I'm a normal person. Like, I'll wake up and have tea. And like, sometimes I'll get messages too. And sometimes things come out of my mouth and I'm like, wow, I don't know why I said that. I wasn't even thinking about that. And the person's like, oh, I know why you said it. You know, like it's spirit using me
Hmm.
to like get their message out or like make a point with someone or make someone think about something a little more deeply.
And when you're mentoring people
Mm-hmm.
in and working on these things, what are some of the things that you begin to do? I mean, I think that trust factor is interesting because I'm trying to imagine or think about it, and as people are listening, and listening to the idea of, okay, trusting intuition or images that sometimes pop up. Validation is a big thing. Actually, we were just talking about this before. The idea that, okay, in order to trust, maybe you need to sort of verify. So how important is that in what people, as they're as developing intuition, developing psychic abilities, like, because you have to trust. So at some point you want to see that the the proof in the pudding.
That is the biggest thing that blocks people is trust. But when I work with a student and I'm teaching them about their gifts, like I'll explain what gifts are what, and we'll go over all the different psychic and mediumship gifts. And each one, like every psychic is different. You could get a reading by this person and then get a reading by that person, and they'll get a lot of the same info, but different. And like overcoming the trust is overcoming the need to be right. Like I don't care whether I'm right or wrong, because that doesn't matter when I'm doing my job. I just deliver. And when you deliver and deliver and deliver, you're going to get validations. They just happen
over time.
Oh yeah. Well, when I first started giving professional readings, I would really want the validation because I didn't trust myself 100%. Like I'd been giving readings to like my friends and stuff, but I didn't trust it professionally, and I wanted people to be happy. But when you want that, they're almost not going to give it to you, because that's not the point of it. The point is to deliver. It doesn't matter if you're the best or the worst or if you're right. Every time I don't say it, I missed one. Do you know what I mean? And if I say it and the person, like if I say, oh, well, did your grandfather carry a pocket watch? And they're like, no. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I don't know why they're showing me that, but maybe you could ask your family, or maybe I'm just off, like I don't have to be right. And 100 times they're calling saying, oh, guess what? He had a pocket watch and you were right. But that doesn't matter to me, because my job is just to deliver. It's like for the highest good of the client.
Yeah. And I think in some people's minds, sometimes, when they think of psychics, the, validation is part of the whole process. And I think that's some of that's like show. You know what I'm saying? Like if it's like, oh, let's wow them with, if there's like a group session or something, like, oh, let's wow them with, I know the name of and the grandfather's coming to them, and all that sort of thing, which, I mean, it could be totally legitimate, but
it feels amazing when you have that validation, or if you get something and the person, your client is like, wow, I can't believe you knew that. Like that feels amazing. Like, oh, you're doing such a good job. But the validation is kind of it's kind of a personal selfish thing, because your
I guess
job,
that's what I'm getting at. You know what I'm saying?
It's really to deliver whatever you get. Like when someone signs up for a reading, they deserve to get everything I get, whether it makes sense right now or later or whatever. They deserve to get all that, whether I'm right or wrong. Like I have to remove myself from that, because it's not about whether I'm right or I'm an awesome psychic medium. It's about this client. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I want the client to get the healing and whatever information that they need. That's number one to me.
And looking at how you perceive things, and I think people today, I think, are getting a better sense that there's a little bit more out there than maybe we like to or have been taught about in the sort of three-dimensional world. There's more out there, and whichever way you come at it, from a faith, some people look at it from a religious standpoint, others spiritual. But I think, that there is consensus that there's something else. I mean, there's, I don't know if there's consensus, but there's more out there than we can see. So how do you look at it? People talk about energy, people talk about consciousness quite a bit. I know that stones and crystals is something that that you are very knowledgeable about. So this world and
Yeah.
this that we live in, and some of it we see, some of it we don't. How do you look at it?
As energy. It's just energy. And I don't try to like I don't have to know
Just like Tesla
exactly.
said.
Yeah, no, it really is.
Energy and vibration,
Yeah,
right?
like I had a problem with my computer and I had to call Apple help. And this guy from India was like doing stuff on my website. And he's like, "Oh, it's just going to take a couple minutes to like load up." And I'm like, "Oh." And all of a sudden I start getting info and I'm like, "Oh, is your dad in the hospital?" And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "How do you know that?" I'm like, "Well, do you see my website?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah, you're a psychic medium, you know?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "I just want you to know he's going to be okay." And I'm like, "Is it something in the throat?" And he's like, "He had his thyroid removed."
Hmm.
And I said, "Oh, that came from having too much responsibility as a child. Your poor dad." I'm like, "But he's going to be okay." And the guy was like blown away. He's like, "Wow, you just made my whole night." And the guy was in India.
Mm-hmm.
It's energy. And
Mm.
that man, like, I didn't open for a reading. I was having help with my computer, but spirit wanted him to have that message because it was weighing on him. He was worried about his father.
Hmm.
Do you know? So sometimes it will happen like that too.
And how does that come to you? So is that, like if you think of the throat, like do you feel it in your throat, or do you
No,
like
it's
like
a,
is it, do you
it,
see it? Do you hear it?
yeah, it's like a feel no.
Mm.
So I feel it. It's like an information that comes in and I feel it like a little bit in the throat. Not, I don't like the physical stuff because I can be a hypochondriac.
Yeah.
So I'm like, "Oh my God, is that my pain or is it theirs?" So I always say, "Show me," to spirit. I say, "Don't let me feel it, show me."
Hmm.
And I actually, that goes against my skills because someone who feels it is going to get a more direct answer. So like if like a grandpa passed and he came through and he'll like point to his chest, he'll go like this and I'll go, "Oh, did he die of something with the heart or the lungs?" So another medium would feel it and be like, "Oh, he had a heart attack."
Mm.
But I'm such a hypochondriac, like I can be, that I'm like, I don't care if I'm worse on that. Like I still get it, but I don't get it as directly.
Mm.
So when you get that psychic info, it just pops in your head like an idea, but it's very subtle. It's like a very subtle thing. And I'm always open to that. And I've been delivering it. So I notice when it comes in and I'll go, "Oh, that's spirit. I got to tell this guy that his dad's going to be okay." Because in my heart, I want everyone to feel peace and feel safety and heal from the things that plague us. And that man was just going about his job, but he was worrying about his dad. And for me to be able to bring him that peace, like the guy was like, "I can't believe I made a friend in the United States." And he was wonderful, like it really helped him. And that makes me feel really good that I could deliver a message for someone that needed it. But it's like always a bunch of different senses. Like it'll be a see, feel, know, or a feel, know, or a hear. Like you might hear something, or you might get a vision, or it just might come out of your mouth.
Mm.
But I recognize it because I've been doing this for a long time. And when I train my students like on how to recognize it, they'll always go, "But I don't feel different." And I'll go, "But I don't feel different either." And I'll say to them, "When you first came to me,
Like,
I
what did
could,
they expect? Like, I'm
yeah,
gonna feel like
well, they
Superman or
expect it
Wonder
to
Woman
be
or
like the
something like that.
movies where like time stops and they get this vision and they just know. It's not like that. It's
Yeah, which is
subtle.
actually kind of makes I would imagine something like that is kind of making it seem okay, well, this is more down to earth.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like, I mean,
It's
people could, it's
natural.
not,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah.
more natural.
And
It's not
you
some
have it.
supernatural
You
thing.
have
Yeah.
it too. And
Yeah.
so doesn't your next door neighbor. Like we all have this gift.
Yeah.
That's
Again,
being a
the
human
CIA has
being.
studied it and researched
Yeah.
it and done many tests on it and have
Oh,
had, things like
yeah.
that. I
And the
mean,
remote viewing,
yeah,
that's like
right.
one of my favorite gifts. Like someone will say, "Oh, Jenna, there's something going on in my house. The light was flickering and I heard the doorknob squeak." And when they're telling me that, this is amazing. Like I'll get a vision of their house and I'll see what spirit is doing that. And oh, it's your grandpa. And he really wants you to know that he misses you and he wants you to stop like sitting in the chair, grieving him and know that he's around you. Like that's a remote view. Like I have remote viewed into like a friend of mine's house. And I'm like, all right, I'm in the kitchen and you have a butcher block and you have one of those big black 2-door refrigerators. And she's like, whoa. And I'm like, okay, now I'm walking into the dining room. Like I can see her home from talking to her on the phone, like the energy. And she was testing me because she thought it was funny.
And by the way, I know this for a fact, law enforcement has
remote viewers.
They use and maybe they can't use it as evidence, but it can put pieces together.
Well,
you
the
hear
details amazing. Like I went through the dining room. I said how it was set up. And then I went into her bedroom and opened her closet and saw she had UGG slippers. And she's like, oh my God. But I only did that because she was testing me. We were like playing with each other, like playing a game.
We got the detail of the UGG slippers.
Yeah, but I can see like wallpaper, like the stuff that spirit shows you.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Like if someone like wants to know what spirits in their house or oh, this butterfly keeps coming to me. And I'm like, oh, are you sitting in a white lawn chair when it comes to you? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah. And there's like a light post next to you. Like I'll see people's homes that I'm reading and they're like, whoa, how do you know this? Like I'm giving a reading in my house on the phone, but they'll show me this. I love remote viewing. It's amazing. And before I had training with my gifts, I'd be like at Kripalu. Like I was still mentoring when I gave readings at Kripalu. And I'd be like, oh my God, I'm doing that thing again. This is wild, And then I'd go talk to my mentor and she'd be like, Jenna, that's remote viewing. And I'd be like, oh,
I just put a label on it.
Yeah. So I teach students what I learned because when you know what gift, like if someone comes to me for a reading and they bring me a pin that was their grandmother's and they'll say, what do you get off this pin? I'll feel it. And I'm reading the energy of a pin. That's psychometry. Yes, it's reading an inanimate object. And like when my girlfriend has a date and she went online to meet someone on a dating site, she'll send a picture and I'll go, don't go out with him. He's not a good guy. And she'll go, really? And I'll go, don't go out with him. He's not a good guy. And then she'll go and she'll be like, oh my God, you were right. And I'm like, well, you had to learn it for yourself. But that's reading a photograph is psychometry. So I teach the students all these little gifts. And that way, when these things appear, you're like, oh, I did psychometry today. And you don't think you have it, but everybody has it. Like I've never trained someone that didn't have it. It's amazing.
So you can pick up on any object, or does it have to be a strong energy to it? Like I'm thinking like, oh, you're talking to that microphone. What are you picking up off of that?
No. And here's the other thing. I like it's against my I want to call it like my spiritual law. Like I do not read people without their permission. Yeah. Like that would be for my benefit. And my gift is not for myself. It's to help other people. So if my girlfriend shows me a picture, I'm helping her. And I'm tuning in. I'm not going to get any guys' secrets. People are afraid.
Yeah.
They'll come
Isn't that
to
interesting?
me and like say someone's cheating or something. They'll be like, oh my God, you can read my mind. I'm not going to pick up on anything that the person doesn't want me to.
Interesting. Interesting. Because I think that there is maybe a lack of openness from some people because of that very reason, because of a fear.
They're scared.
They're hiding something.
Yeah. One of my friends she's like, Jenna makes me nervous because I think she can read my mind. And I'm like, oh my God, I totally can't. And I wouldn't if I could, but I can't. I can't read minds.
Yeah.
I read the energy, and then spirit is really responsible for that. And I just it's that subtle, like these knowings that come through. If someone's not open to, like my dad is not open to be read. His mother has been standing there 100 times and I'll be like, Dad, your mom's there. And he's like, don't talk about that. Like it freaks him out because everything he knows, like with his math brain, that's woohoo.
Right. Right.
And I'm adopted. So this is why he doesn't have that. Like he's just not open-minded to see that.
So you started way back when you were 3. And now where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Westwood, Mass.
Okay.
So out towards Boston.
All right. And so then, you talked about your school days and high school and the rest. So then when did you get really serious about it? I mean, this is your business. This is how you make a living. But so tell me about that evolution a little bit when you maybe got more formal training.
Yeah. Well, I grew up with it and I always knew I was different because I'd know things or something would come out of my mouth and I'd be like, oh my God, why did I say that? And I'd try to like fit in and not listen to that. And if it's crucial, it's going to come out. So I grew up with that. And I like most of the people that I was close with, like growing up as like a best friend, they were very much open to, but I didn't know. But you just like boyfriends or best friends, you vibe with people that are like you, but they didn't know it. But they
didn't know it, but they also people don't really talk about it because again,
well, you could end up in Jones, or be burned at the stake,
a few centuries ago, but
there's that's like a stigma and a fear that's still, we've probably all had lives where we were psychic and burned at the stake or put in a mental institution, because that's what they did with a lot of people then. So I think that stigma is very real in our bodies. But as for like coming into it, I stopped fighting it when I got divorced. And that my life was like, I lost my family, my dream, and all of my friends when I got divorced. And it was a very hard divorce, but it was a beautiful thing that happened. I didn't think that at the time, but it allowed me to say, you know what? I'm just going to be who I really am. And I'm not going to like play this game. I'm not going to make things look pretty. This is who I really am. And then I started using my gift more. And then I started working with a mentor, and she helped me a lot for many years.
It's amazing how divorce can do that.
Oh, it's a wonderful thing. People don't know it, but it leads you to like, it's so hard, but it leads you to such beautiful pastures,
Yeah, it can. And it is. I mean, and sometimes you wonder or think about, well, we all have our journeys and they're not supposed to be easy.
No.
Yours sounds like it wasn't,
No.
at least during that period, but there's growth. I mean,
growth
doesn't happen without friction.
No.
Right?
And I like, people ask, cause I have a really, I don't want to like, the divorce was very hard. And people ask, oh, well, would you do it again? And I really would. I would do it again for my children that I wouldn't have had, and for my awesome short last name that I wouldn't have had. I got something out of it, right? But I would do it again because when I married someone, I stood up at that altar and they said their vows first, and I knew I shouldn't marry him, and every ounce of my soul knew it. But I didn't want to disappoint another. And I felt trapped. So what did I do in that moment? I betrayed my own soul, because you can't betray yourself for another. And that lesson is like one of the biggest lessons of my life. And I help people with that lesson all the time. And I wouldn't change it, because without that wisdom, I wouldn't have that knowledge to help people.
Right. And just like, you gave advice to the girlfriend not to go out with that guy who was not a good guy. They had to go through that.
Yeah. And I support them the whole way, hold their hand, love it. But I would have to learn for myself too. They're asking me. And sometimes when you want something you don't believe, like a lot of say someone goes back to someone and they're a cheater, and they'll say, Jenna, is this person going to cheat again? And I said, yeah, that person's not going to change. And
That's where the saying
you're
comes
going to
from.
go back. And they're like, no, I won't. And I'm like, yep, you're going to go back. And I still love you and I still support you, and it's going to be okay. And that's the kick you're going to need to move on.
Yeah.
And then they go back and they're like, well, you were right. And I'm like, I know.
Yeah.
I know,
well,
you know.
Once a cheater.
Yeah, well, that's not true. People can change. People can change.
Okay.
They really can.
There you
and
go.
I think people cheat because they betray their own soul, and they're always doing something to please others. And being able to not betray yourself and disappoint another is a huge thing, because in the long run, if you disappoint someone, yeah, that's awful. You're hurting someone with your honesty, but that's on a truth foundation. And that's all we have. If you don't have truth, you have a crumbling foundation, you know. But if you hurt someone with truth and stay true to yourself, that person gets a lesson. That person is saved from making a mistake also. And so you're doing an injustice to that person by not being honest. Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But people have a hard, even
there's one. Okay. So honesty is always the best policy, right? And, some of these truisms are definitely true.
It's true.
And yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, truth is the best policy, and energetically too.
Yeah. Well, also, like say there's a marriage where the man, he cheats on the wife and he doesn't want to tell the wife because it's going to destroy her. By him doing that, he's very selfish. I'm not even talking about the cheating. The cheating's there because he betrayed his own soul to please another.
Mm-hmm.
By him staying with the wife, he's keeping her from her rightful place with the man that would love her forever. Mm-hmm. And he's keeping himself from finding someone that he would love forever.
Right, because he's maintaining the lie.
And people are scared of disappointing other people, but I would honestly rather disappoint someone than do the lie, because I know this stinks and I'm going to hurt someone, but I'm disappointing them with truth, and they're going to end up in their rightful place, and they're going to come back and really appreciate that later. And I have a lot of ex-boyfriends that I've been honest with, or when the relationship's dead, and I'll tell them the truth, and they'll get mad and hurt. And it's really hard to stay strong when someone's mad at you like that. And when you've hurt someone, you feel awful. But I could call up any one of them and they'd have coffee and we could talk and laugh, and we're friends, do you know, because it was done in truth. And when you love someone, you should be honest.
Yeah. So when it comes to clients of yours, not to have a breakdown of, the types of clients, but I'm sure some go, in from a personal relationship standpoint. Some come in maybe from just the medium standpoint, what's going on with my ancestry, what do you see there? And then maybe
there could be lost dogs, animal communication.
And then also people, looking to
with
just
health,
grow and professionally in that world as well. So, give me a sense of people, of the types of people that, and if that's not even a type of people, that's kind of like their main focus.
All right,
what are some of your main focuses?
I think you're asking this. The two things
what am I
that
asking?
people want to know most in readings is love and money.
Love and money.
Yeah.
There you go.
Like you'll be doing love and money for the rest of your life, because everybody is afraid of ending up alone. And everybody wants to make it and have enough for the people they love. And so love and money, that's always going to be it. But it depends on the person. Like I'll have some people come and they lost their dog and they want to know where their dog is, and I'll tune in and remote view and help them with that. Or even knowing,
of course, a lost dog is still love and money.
Yeah, it is.
It's a little
that's
both.
The love. Yeah.
Lots of love.
Yeah, there's a lot. Like some people come for if they have health ailments and they want to know what spirit says, and spirit will give like it's always a weird recipe. Like someone will come and they'll say, "Oh, my husband has arthritis," and then I'll just hear something weird, and I'll actually learn something. And I'll say like, "Oh, he has arthritis. I'm hearing aloe water." And this is actually a client this happened with, and they'll be like, well, what is that? I'm like, I have no idea, but that's what spirit said, so you need to look into it. And then they'll message me and be like, oh my god, he's drinking the aloe water and he can move his hands, and I'm like, whoa. So like with health intuition, it's always something weird, and I really do learn a lot like through
you do
spirit
great
with that.
impressions of your clients.
Yeah, I love them. I love them. It's when you help someone, like when someone comes for a reading, right? It's on a truth vibration. So there's no lying. Spirit knows everything. So it's on this vibration. This is why I should have tissues growing out of my body, because almost every client cries because it's on a truth vibration. And when they come for a reading, their loved one will come through, which is grief, and that makes people cry. Or if they're really needing help on their path, spirit's going to show them that, and it's emotional because they already know this. Spirit's saying it. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And they're trying not to look at it or hide it.
Right.
But you can't hide.
Yeah.
It's this lovely energy, and it's very, I think I heal with every reading I give because it gives me gratitude and it gives me joy. And I'll tell you this, when a spirit comes through and they're like, "Oh, I love you and I miss you," and whatever, that doesn't emotionally get me. It's when the spirit comes through and says, "I'm proud of you." Every time a spirit does that, I'm crying. And I'm like, "Great, your grandpa just messed up my mascara," and they laugh. But with grief too, it's such a touchy subject, and I'm not normal. Like I'm not a normal grievy person because of what I do.
Right. And in other people who do work like that, I think they almost make light of it in the sense, I've heard some people say, oh well, they use the term, oh well, so and so croaked, or that sort of thing. They make light of it because there's a certain sense that you kind of you're very aware of this, that there's energy and they continue on, so that really gone in that way. And then the other thing is you just have to keep it kind of light because you don't want to make it.
I don't keep it light though, John. Okay. I don't.
All right.
When someone's grieving, I go right in. I'm like, all right, well, he's saying this, and the person will cry. Even if I have a friend that lost someone, I'll go right in, because what people need is not for us to tiptoe around the grief, not to upset the person. The person's lost a loved one. They're very upset. So I go right in and I'm like, well, tell me how you're feeling. And, oh, he's coming through now and he has this message. And I tell all my clients, when someone first passes away with grief, you're almost numb. Like they haven't grieved yet. They're numb, and that could last 6 months to a year.
Yeah.
And we're bringing these people casseroles and, oh, I'm so sorry, and here's a card and I'm thinking of you, and they're numb. They're in shock that they just lost someone they love. And I always say to people, bring that casserole 6 months down the line and talk about the person, because people tiptoe around grief, and that doesn't keep the spirit's memory alive. And it doesn't help the person grieving. You need to talk about it. Unless they tell you, please don't talk about that, it makes me very upset. Most people want to talk about it.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, the whole point is you've lost somebody. You're sad about it because that person is no longer there. So you would think that, yes, talking about that person and feeling good about the memories and everything that person meant to you would actually be helpful.
Yeah, everybody's different with their grief, but there is a numbness that, like when someone first passes away, like for the first 6 months, they're pretty numb. So that's why I'm like, bring the casserole at 6 months, because that's when people need you, is after they've digested that they've lost their loved one. And that's when people are like, oh, they're done. And it's really hard for people when you lose someone. And I remember feeling this way when my grandmother died. And And I know where she went, and I know that she's still there and that she's still around me, and I still have all my memories, and I can know when she's around, but these people, they need that, like after they come out of the numbness and they start that grieving process, that's when they need us. That's when they need us to check on them, to bring the casserole, say, oh, you don't feel like talking about it? Here, let me take your garbage out for you. Like, let me help you in any way. And it's so hard because life just keeps going on and your person's gone.
Yeah.
And that's what I find is the hardest part. And with my clients, like that is the hardest part. Like it's so shocking that this person that meant so much to you, like life's just going on like they never existed. And so I always tell people, like, check in on your people, like for the first 2 years, like check in, because they're numb for the first 6 months.
Yeah.
And
that is interesting, because you would think that there's a sense, I'm sure, that when people think about death and they're like, oh my God, like, will people be sad when I'm gone? Or will life just go on? Well, the fact of the matter is life will go on when you go on. But when you're looking at that as someone who you love, and then recognizing that, okay, everyone seems to be okay with this, I'm not. That must be extra devastating, really, because you're not really grieving with anyone else, because maybe that person was
and then
closest to you.
They feel like everybody expects them to be all right. So then when they're grieving and they're really in it, they're like, I should be over this by now. Why do I feel this way? But I think mediumship it's a wonderful gift for people who have lost people, because it shows them that they are always around us, that they know what's going on in your life, and they're there to help guide you. We just don't always know it.
Yeah. And like, what are things that, I mean, because everyone communicates in different ways, and spirits communicates, I'm sure, every, I don't know how you describe it, souls, or communicate in different ways. So what are things that may come to you,
like during a reading?
During a reading, how people, I don't know if there's a typical way. Like, how does grandpa usually communicate? It's clearly it's always different, but
spirits communicate differently. Like sometimes they'll show pictures to me in their mind, or they'll give me like a little mini movie to show me like a scene, and then when I say the scene, the person's like, oh wow, yeah, that happened. Or sometimes I'll hear a song and I'll say, oh, does this song mean anything? Or like, I always ask the spirits, like, because they give us signs, and the signs can be physical, or it could be a butterfly or something, or a penny. Or, well, for instance, those are two very common ones. So with my clients, I always ask for a sign. I don't ask, they know that I'm thinking that. Do you know what I mean? So the spirit will say, oh, he's showing me pennies, I'll say. And they'll go, oh my gosh, I just found a penny in a weird place today. And I'm like, that's from him. And so they each spirit is different. Sometimes they show up at my house in the morning. Like I usually do my first readings around 10 or 11. And I'll come downstairs and someone's dad is in the corner. And I'm like, oh, there's that guy. He's with someone today. But they know, like, I don't tune into them, because I know when I get on the phone with someone, they're going to step forward. And I don't feel it's right to tune into them until I'm with their person. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but I have come down, and even my kids are like, who's that guy? And I'm like, oh, he's one of the readings today, probably, It's funny.
He's in the waiting room.
I've had spirits give me gifts too. Like if I've helped someone, like there was this woman, and I gave her a reading, and her grandmother gave her dimes. And I kept telling her that. And the woman was very skeptical. And she's like, no, Jenna, that's not true. And I'm like, well, that's what I'm getting. And she was putting on her boots at the end of the reading and she was like in Ohio or something. And because it was winter, she had to go pick up her kids, and she picked up her second boot and found a dime. And I go, I told you. And she's like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I'm like, save that dime because that's from your grandmother. And she's like, oh my God, I'm gonna. It like opened her up. But so when I finished the reading, it had just snowed where we are. And I went outside to pick up my kids from school, and there's a dime on the walkway with no footprints, nothing on top of the snow. So I picked it up and I heard her grandmother say, thank you. So like I'll sometimes get weird gifts like that too from a client because that grandmother's been trying to get through to that client for like, I'm here, you know?
Yeah. Wow.
So it's really it's a very it's a beautiful experience. I can't even put it into words. I always call it, it's like a euphoric high. Like when you do readings and you help someone on that level, and it's undeniable and it's magical, and it seriously is like a drug. It's like a euphoric high. You feel whole in your heart, and that person does too. It's really a beautiful thing.
It's amazing. It's
Yeah.
amazing. Huh. Wow.
Yeah, that's just mediumship though. Like the psychic part is that's my favorite.
Yeah. Well, tell me about free will, because
Yeah.
here you are, and I presume you'll see visions of someone and maybe something in the future. And I don't know, maybe there are things that people don't want to see or don't or they don't like what you're telling them, maybe.
Right.
And so I guess that there's that question of, okay, well, there's things that potentially could be, there's free will. Is there a destiny? Is that, what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
how do people, how do you work through that concept?
All right, so with free will, I feel like if spirits, like say I'm in the grocery store, for instance, and spirits giving me this information, if there was a time in the grocery store, I don't normally like read people in public. I feel like that's not for the highest good, and they may not be open. But I was in the grocery store and I was in the freezer aisle. I was going to check out of there, get my food, and I'm in the freezer aisle, and there's this guy, a spirit, someone's dad, holding on to my cart saying, tell her not to quit nursing school. And I'm like, oh, buddy, get out of my way. I got to get home. I'm not going to interfere. And he was adamant. And there's a girl down the aisle picking up her waffles or whatever. And I went up to her and I said, hi, I'm a psychic medium. I know this is going to freak you out and make you very upset, but your father just pushed my cart into me. That's how pushy he is. And he says, don't you dare quit nursing school. She lost it. She started crying. And then she's following me around the store because she wants more info. But I don't know if she quit nursing school, but he wouldn't leave me alone. Right. In a case like that, I will deliver the message, because how do I know? Like, it's not even me, but spirit's giving me that could be the only way this girl would get that message. And she needed that for her highest good.
Yeah.
So I will do that if they're really pushy. I will, but I try not to. And I do sometimes know things and keep quiet, because I know that person's not ready for that, but usually spirit decides that and I just deliver. And if someone's having a reading with me, they're giving their permission. So when you sign up for a reading with me, you're giving me your permission when we get on the phone and I do the reading to tune into your energy and tell you what spirit's giving me. So amazing. I have their permission in that way.
Yeah.
It's magical. It really is.
It must be fun being you.
Unless you have to deliver something bad.
Well, right.
And it does, knowing things is not always a blessing. It can be a real burden too.
Well, we've been through a lot as a community around the world over the last couple of years. And I think when you look at these things, it's hard not to see people as a collective and kind of like where we're at. And, just from energetic standpoint, just from a happiness standpoint, we've been through a lot. And I think a lot of people have been just kind of not happy.
Yeah.
There's been just it's been a long process, and I think as getting through all of what we've gone through with the pandemic and the rest, we're starting to get out of it, and I think people are excited to just get out,
Right.
even just and have some sense of normalcy, to use that term. But how do you feel about where people are at right now?
I feel like I'm gonna sound kind of crazy when I say this because not everybody is into the woohoo, but the Earth's vibration is rising to that of a truth vibration. So it's a more compassionate and loving energy, and it's a female energy, and we've been in male energy for so long. So what's going on in the world is we're all acclimating to this lighter, more loving, compassionate energy. And I feel like the future is going to be quite bright because of that energy, where people might be safe to be themselves and be loved for themselves. And that's what I feel like is going to happen in the future. I feel like we have a little bit of some bumpy roads coming to get to that point. And whenever you're acclimating to like a different temperature or a different place or whatever, a vibe, which we're doing now, it's uncomfortable
Hmm.
and it's painful.
Hmm.
And I feel like a lot of people are going through that. What worries me is the teenagers because I have two, and it's very hard for them to plan for the future with the world in this state. And I feel it feels almost hopeless. Like a lot of our young people feel very hopeless and they can't plan anything.
Hmm.
And that worries me a little. But I do think the overall end goal is going to be beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting because also there's this whole philosophy of, okay, be present, be present.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're truly present, how much can you plan? So it's like
Yeah.
this dual action, to have a vision for what you want in the future, and also be right there,
Yeah.
and sort of doing everything every day, and being present. But that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And I think being present is a really hard thing because we do get ahead of ourselves and we're in the future with fear and anxiety.
Yeah.
And if in the present moment is really the only place where we're safe, but then your fear and anxiety, it's like, well, I didn't plan. What about this? But you can plan for the future, but then stay grounded and present too.
Yeah. Tell me about that a little bit, the groundedness, because you
Oh,
teach.
I'm a terrible grounded
What?
person. Like I,
Don't
I
you
have to
teach?
ground myself all the time. I'm always in the
But you
clouds.
teach. Well, maybe that's why you teach workshops about it,
Yes,
because you've had
yes,
to do that yourself. But that's when you talk about things you do at Kripalu and
yeah.
other venues. That's one of those things. So what does that even mean, being to you, being
So
being grounded?
being grounded is it's being like connected to the earth and the ground and like having like your energy in the present moment. And when I do readings, I have to raise my vibe. And a lot of times I'm not grounded and I'll walk around floaty. Like if you come downstairs in the morning and hit your toe on the coffee table, you're not grounded. Like I'll trip upstairs and I'll be like, oh, I'm not grounded. It takes me like five things to realize. But if I was reading someone, I'd be like, oh, you're not grounded.
Mm.
So, like, I think keeping your energy in that present moment is being grounded and grounded to Mother Earth. That's what they call it, like grounded to Mother Earth. But there's like meditations you can do. You can just sit by a tree. You can be barefoot on the ground. That helps you ground. Gardening
Mm.
helps you ground. Like, there's a million different ways you can ground.
Yeah,
Crystals.
yeah. One of the easy ways, well, crystals, but also, yeah, one of the easy ways to be grounded is simply to be in touch with nature, and
Mm-hmm.
literally in touch. I've had this conversation on the podcast
Yeah.
before, with people, especially the people who love the trails and the trees and everything. But
Yeah.
literally being barefoot in the
Mm-hmm.
grass, putting your hand up to a tree, or maybe both hands, maybe even hug the tree.
Yeah.
That again,
Keeps you
this is
grounded.
all research.
If
This
you
is all
feel
research. This is not,
anxious,
it helps.
if you feel anxious, you're not grounded.
Yeah.
And you'll see me because I'm so sensitive to energy. Sometimes I'll get anxiety and people will drive by my house and I'm out on the front lawn barefoot with hematite, like holding hematite. And I'm just grounding over here, But yeah, everybody has to ground. Like people don't realize it because when you're in the clouds, like it's like a dizzy feeling too. It's like come back to earth where you're safe.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
grounding.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I need to ground more. But I always say like every person, especially psychics, we all suffer from like poor spiritual hygiene, and grounding would be like the hygiene. Like because I help other people, I don't look at myself, and then three things will happen. Like I'll stub my toe on the coffee table, trip upstairs, and like have a household accident. And I'm like, oh, it's because I'm not grounded. But we're helping someone else, you'd be like, you're not grounded. Here, come sit down, like hold this hematite.
The shoe cobbler's son, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I can't, imagine, as I said, well, it must be really fun being you, but also can be very difficult. Well, I mean, that's
not in that way.
Well, yeah. Right. So, and that's interesting that, again, because clearly you're passionate about what you do, but also it's like you can't deny it because it's coming to you all the time. So, at some point, you have to be able to focus on yourself.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I'm just a normal person learning my stuff. I go to get psychic readings, and like I keep a bunch of psychics around me, and I'll be like, oh, what do you get off of this? And we swap info. And it helps me. Like I always feel helped. If I have like a health ailment, I'll go to a psychic. Like I have this best friend named Rod. The man is wonderful, and he's like a super psychic. And I'll say, Rod, I have this pain.
The psychic's psychic.
No, he's like so amazing. I'll be like, Rod, I have this pain, and what do you think it is? And he'll go, oh, it's nothing serious, and it'll be gone on Thursday. And I'm like, oh, right, okay, whatever. I'll wake up Thursday and I'll go, oh my God, it was right. Like I'm skeptical too because I'm a human, but like I don't get a lot of info for myself. Like once in a while, I'll see my own spirits, but I don't sit and talk to spirits. Like my gift is for other people. If I'm like around someone dangerous, my gut's going to act up like yours would, or like the neighbors would, like any person. But I don't get a lot of psychic info because that would give me the upper hand in life. And I wouldn't learn my lessons, and my relationships wouldn't be equal. So I'm just a human out there swimming in the sea too,
And so tell me about the crystals a little bit, because and sometimes I think we're in this generation where, okay, so there's definitely crystals is like a thing right now, for sure.
Like a fad.
It could be a fad. I don't know, I don't know too much about it. I know enough to be dangerous,
Yeah.
But tell me about that, because I think you've been knowledgeable about this for many years. So, so yes, there's the fad right now, but you were long before.
But I'm glad there's a fad because more people are opening up to how amazing the crystals are. Because crystals, their energy we take in through our chakras, which are energy sources in the body, and it will heal different ailments. And like depending on the ailment, there's whatever your ailment is, there's a crystal that you can work with to help that ailment. And I still say,
and how does it do that?
Yeah, like it's through your energy. Like say I have a bruise on my leg, like I'll get a clear quartz tumbled stone and hold it to the bruise, and say the bruise is bigger than the stone, it's gonna heal in the middle, and then you'll see the parts where you didn't hold it. Like crystals are amazing. Like you can take an amethyst if you have a headache and lie down on the couch and put it on your third eye, like a dark purple one, and your headache's going to go away. Like if you
because
the energy,
and there's a certain vibration to that,
and
like
they're healing.
like Tesla said,
yeah,
think of terms of energy and vibration.
Yeah.
Right. So like, and we are energy. We are energy.
Yeah.
And we are giving off a vibration. This table is giving off a certain vibration. So those crystals have a certain vibration.
I don't know, like for some reason my thing with the crystals is ailments, like helping people with health or spiritual or personal ailments. And I can tell you the crystal for really any ailment. But like, as for knowing like their hardness and where they come from on the earth, like, I don't know that. That's not interesting to me. So I think that's why I don't know that. But I love when there's a skeptic, because I used to work at the store and there was this woman that came in and was like, this stuff doesn't work. And it was a crystal store. And I said, oh, yeah, well, this one's on me. What is your worst ailment right now? And she said, oh, I have a sinus infection. And I said, okay, take this snowflake obsidian, go home, and when you're watching TV, hold it to your nose. She came back and bought them for all her friends because they work. They work. And animals, you can heal animals with them. Animals actually heal faster from crystals than people do because their minds don't get in the way. They're amazing. They've changed my life.
Wow.
Like I cannot live without crystals, and hematite is like my all-time favorite. Because it's the one for grounding. It helps anxiety. It helps car sickness. It helps insomnia. It's like my absolute go-to, and I love it. I will not leave home without it.
Yeah. And you do readings for people all over the country?
Yep, all over the world.
All over the world.
Yeah. And I'm just doing them by phone now instead, because when COVID happened, I started doing them, because I used to do them in person, but I started doing them on the phone, and that works so much better for me with 2 teenagers and like rotating the schedules. And it also allows me to read people from all over. So, and I like it better. So I'm going to stick with it.
And not so much Zoom.
I don't do Zoom because a lot of times the vibe is so high, it like shuts out. And also when I see myself, like I'm having a hard time even being on camera here. I don't like to see myself. Okay. But in Zoom, when I see myself, I'm like, oh my God, my hair, I look awful. Like, how can I give this reading? It distracts me. So I want to give people the best reading. So I better not be seen, you know? So I do it on the phone for that purpose, but I don't like to have to keep calling people back. Like with the Zoom.
Yeah. So that it's, I mean, when you have clients all over the world, then it's kind of like, well, what's the point of having a space? Because I don't know if at one point you had a space.
I've had a couple spaces, and I probably will in the future.
Yeah,
I probably will. But just right now, like I want to get my daughter, she's going to be a junior. I want to get her through high school. And this is just works better for me right now.
Yeah.
I love it. And plus I can be in my pajamas when I'm reading people and no one knows, you know, I think it works out great. I also find, I have a lot of clients that are like, oh, well, I'll just wait till you're in person again. And I'm like, well, you're missing out, because, there's no difference from in person than on the phone.
Energy is energy.
Yes. And they don't realize that, or they think it's going to be a lesser experience. But actually, I find when someone's in their own home and they're on the phone with me, they're a lot more relaxed. So I get more info. So it's actually a better reading.
Are you more focused, but just by hearing, you know, in other words, because there's all these different variables,
right? When
it's in person, there's a visual, there's the, you know, you're in a location, you know, that sort of thing. Is that part of it too? I
don't feel like when I'm with someone in person, it doesn't distract me at all.
Yeah.
It's just the technology. Like if I go to the grocery store, guaranteed I'm going to be in the wrong line, because that grocer is going to like not be able to check out because my energy messes with technology.
Really?
I'll probably drive home and street lights will go out. And my whole life I'm like, oh my God, this is bad luck. The lights are going out, like they don't want me to see. But it's just my energy messes with stuff. Like you can ask my boyfriend, because I have a problem with our printer. I'll go to print something out and it will not work. He'll go, get out of here. Go in the other room, and he'll hit print. It works. Like I mess with technology, and I think it's because
Well,
my vibe
I'm
is
glad you're not
high.
messing. I mean, so far so good. Knock
It's
on
because
wood.
I'm not using it. Like if I was using it, it would be messed up. But I do. It's just a high energy vibration, and I think that happens to a lot of people. And if anybody out there is driving and street lights always go out, it's not a bad sign. You just have high energy. Because it was scary. It scared me for a while, but yeah, as for in person or on the phone, I like both. I love in person too, because it's more like personal, seeing someone. It's a lot more work because I have to like sage everything after each client and to make the energy good,
Yeah.
because you don't want someone else's residue in there.
So, as you mentioned, you're a mom.
Mm-hmm.
So, you're a mom
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. They call me nutty. My kids, they're like, you're so nutty, mom. And I'm like, oh, at least they didn't say crazy, nutty I'll take. But yeah, they call me nutty.
So, do the other moms know all about,
Yeah.
I don't know if you're a soccer mom or you're a,
Yeah.
or
I
a,
don't hide it. I don't
yeah.
hide it. I really don't. They know.
Cocktail parties would be fun.
Yeah, I don't my kids are older now, so I don't have to like do as much with other families and stuff. Like that's when their kids are younger. Like I'll hang out with their friends, and if I'm picking up my daughter, like I wave, but I don't like hang out with other my children's friends' families or anything. Not anymore. I used to, but I don't hide it. Like I'm not ashamed of it. And there's people that look at me and they're like, oh, that's really, you're really crazy to do that and or say that or claim that. And that I don't take insult to that. That's someone else's opinion. Well, maybe it's not for you,
Mm-hmm.
But no, I'm not ashamed of it. And I mean, besides my kids calling me nutty, they do come to me a lot and say, well, mom, you were right. And I'm like, oh, I'm not so nutty, was I? Like they can still
Mom is
like
always right.
yeah, they can still get away with stuff too. People always ask me like, oh, do you know when they're lying? And I know when they're lying just as a person, because like you can see the twinge in the mouth. Like I know, like it's almost like they know I'm gonna know, but I think that's just a mom thing. It's not a psychic thing.
Psychic.
No,
mom powers.
Yeah.
Every mom's got
every
it.
mom's
You just got to work on it.
Every mom's got it. Yeah, I think it's hard for my kids, and I do feel bad. Growing up with someone who does readings, it's quite embarrassing.
Yeah.
Like, because they'll be at school, oh, what does your mom do? And a lot of times, my kids will say, they won't tell them I'm a psychic medium. They'll tell them, oh, my mom makes jewelry, because I make a line of crystal healing jewelry because I like to wear it rather than carry all those stones. And so they'll say that. And I don't take offense to that. I think they're just trying to fit in.
Yeah.
But now they're like, oh, my mother, can you read my friend, mom? And I'm like, oh, are they 18? Like maybe. But now they're coming into it more. So it's getting easier. And when they were young, like they would say, if we had an argument or something, they'd be like, well, I hate crystals. And I'd be like, oh my God, no, don't say that, But now they're like, mom, what crystals for this? And they'll go grab it and use it. So it's amazing the stages with kids. You never can sit. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what
it
you
is
mean.
amazing.
I mean, well, I don't have any teenagers yet, so
yeah, it's fun.
But
like it's a switch. It's like a real switch. But I like my kids. Like I think they're really good people and they
Mm,
both help a lot of people like with their friends, and it's that famous empath, which is a highly sensitive person. That's actually a psychic gift and it stinks and a lot of people have it. And you'll know you're an empath if people will go, "Oh, I don't know why I'm telling you this, but," and then they start telling you.
mm,
That's what happens to my kids, and my kids have learned to accept that and help, and
mm.
I love that about them.
It's interesting because as I presume as far as someone being in that position or even being someone who's vulnerable, let's just
Mm-hmm.
put it at that, you tend to, I don't know, go in as you grow or not grow, people can maybe if they've been burnt, then they become more calloused,
Mm-hmm.
and then they kind of shut that side off
Mm-hmm.
a lot. And um, I wonder if that was ever anything that happened to you at some point, or did you think about that, or is that common? Because you can be an empath, and then at some point it gets
Oh,
overwhelming,
it's
and then you just cut it right off.
it's extremely common. And I want to say a lot of addicts and alcoholics are empaths and it's just too much energy, so they're numbing it.
Mm,
And I think it's a lot. I spent a lot of my teenage years with a ton of anxiety. Like I used to bring my car with me wherever I went so I'd have my escape. So if I had to leave, people didn't get mad at me and have to drive me home. Like I got to bring my car, like just in case I have to leave and I have anxiety.
mm,
But I actually went to a therapist for anxiety when I was in high school, and the therapist is like, "Well, what's setting this off?" And I'm like, "Nothing. Like, I'm not afraid of tests or like nothing's going on in school." I'm like, "I don't know. Like, I'll just be somewhere." And all of a sudden, I feel this anxiety, like my stomach knots up and my heart starts racing and I feel so scared. And they couldn't help me.
right. Mm,
And
yeah.
then, like, as I grew into my gift, I started learning that, oh, this is why I'm picking up on this guy over here who just had a fight with his wife. And like, I could be fine and go somewhere and I'd pick up on the energy.
Mm,
And then it makes me feel unsafe and anxious. But when I learned about energy and me picking up on it and being open to that, I could shield myself
mm,
from that. Like when I go to Target, I put a bubble on.
mm,
Like I teach people, I call it the triple M bubble. And it's like you visualize white light going in and putting a bubble around yourself. And you color the first bubble blue for Archangel Michael. So there's your first M. And he's the angel of protection. And then you bring another white light in and put another bubble over Michael's bubble, and you do a mirror. And that allows anyone's energy to bounce back off into the universe and not penetrate you. And then the last bubble, you color silver for Archangel Metatron, who's the biggest, strongest angel there is.
mm.
And so you have triple M's, triple M bubble of protection. And I started doing that with my son because I thought if I use Metatron, like it sounds like a transformer, and he'd be like, "Yeah, triple M bubble." But I would have them put it on, and we'd go in Target, and my daughter would go, "I have a headache," and I'm like, "Oh, you didn't put your bubble on," because I'll pull up at the store and put my bubble on, and
Mm,
then go in.
mm.
And I would have them do it. And she'd be in there and I'm like, "You didn't put your bubble on." She's like, "I didn't." And I'm like, "That's why you have a headache."
Yeah, and it's interesting because when a lot of spiritual people, for lack of a better description, talk about Archangel Michael,
Mm-hmm.
and one may think, oh, well, that's like a Catholic thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because and but actually, it's more universal than
Yeah.
that. I mean, so that's interesting,
Yeah.
because I don't associate necessarily people like you
Yeah.
to like the Catholic faith,
Yeah.
but like that's the sort of maybe perception because it's Saint Michael and
Mm-hmm.
all that. But that's interesting.
Yeah, it is. I have a good connection with angels, and a lot of people have angels around them, and I'll see not like how they paint them, but how I see an angel is like the color. I'll see like this hue around people, and sometimes I'll see a wing, so I know it's an angel. And then I'll say, "Oh, by the way, you have Archangel Jophiel around you." And they're like, "Who's that?" And I'm like, "It's a yellow and pink angel."
Mm.
And they'll look it up and be like, "Whoa!" I'll go Google her healing, or it's healing, because angels are supposedly sexless, but she feels feminine, that Jophiel. And it will be all this stuff about self-love, and the woman just got out of a relationship and her self-love is in the gutter.
Yeah.
So she's like, "Whoa." And I'm like, "Look at how awesome you are. You have that angel working with you."
Yeah.
You
So
know?
when you have, and people who are very religious, and maybe they go to the store and they buy, the St. Michael
Yeah.
protector or the cards or that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And different trinkets and that and so forth. How do you feel about that?
I think it's beautiful.
Yeah.
I think if that brings you safety, and you have an Archangel Michael necklace, or Saint Michael is what they call it. You're invoking him, you're honoring him, and your intent is to have that energy around you. And I think it's a beautiful thing.
And
yeah, I'm not religious, but
yeah,
I don't
well, I guess I
down
mean
religion.
I'm it's always kind of like seeking like where are these connections. In other words, because I feel like human beings, we're all much more alike than other words. No matter what you believe in, or what your faith is, or what you grew up with, or what you evolved into or out of. There's a lot more we have in common than otherwise, even on some of these levels, and we may not even know it.
Yeah, it's I think we have a lot of people that are all right, how I measure success. Okay, this people think success is money and your stuff and having the perfect family and all of that. But really, success is your level of happiness on a daily basis. Like, that is how I measure success, is how happy you are. If you have a job, like my job, I love my job. So when I wake up in the morning, I'm like happy. I'm like, "Ooh, who do I get to tune into today?" And you know what I mean? Like, I feel excited about it. So it's not like a job. And I'll do my job. Like, I don't think about retirement. When I'm an old lady and I'm in a wheelchair and I'm blind and half deaf, I can still read, and I'm going to still be helping people. Like, your level of happiness in your everyday is how I measure success. And I think that people forget that. And I think that, like, somewhat society and technology and all of that takes away from our happiness. And you forget, like, what am I here just to work and pay bills and die? Like, no. Like, how do we feel happy? We feel happy when we help someone.
Yeah.
How do you fill that hole? Well, you fill that hole by giving out.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a society that's been created where we are in that system. And maybe that's some of the things that we're starting to, as you talk about, the earth, and it's, where things
Raising
are
the vibe.
raising the vibe. Maybe that's the kind of system that we're starting to break out of.
Yeah.
And I think COVID was an accelerator of that. And I'm not the first one to talk about this,
I
that people
agree.
are really understanding what it means to be happy and what it means to actually live a great life. And what we thought before all this, and we were just kind of like going through the motions, and we had the job and paying the mortgage and what have you. No, we can not necessarily go into the office every day. We don't, we can find other ways to make it work, have the money that we need to have to live life. But even that, I mean, what does it all mean? So I think a lot of people were asking these questions during that time, and it hasn't gone away. It hasn't gone away. I think it made a big imprint.
A lot of like, if you're with the wrong person and know that, like how we talked about that earlier, like a lot of couples are breaking up, and a lot of people are switching jobs or moving. And I feel like it's like this innate feeling that I'm doing all this and I don't have enough happiness. And I think that that's going to change. Like, when you're doing I always say this to like, I'm probably beating a dead horse with how many times I say this, but in life, it needs to be a win-win. Like both people need to have the win-win. If it's not a win-win, it's horrible for both people. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? And it's always been this energy of one person wins. And that's not fair. And that's not right. And it's not helping humanity. Like, I'll tell you, like, sometimes I'll give a free reading to someone. And like one of my friends will be like, oh, why didn't you charge them? And I'm like, well, they don't have any money and they needed this reading and spirit was right there. And I had to give them the reading. And they don't down me for that. But then that person I read sends me 3 people. Mm-hmm. Like, is that a win-win? Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like if, say, I ran some store and I was extremely successful and I had someone working for me, that person would get as much goodies as I would, mm-hmm. so that it's a win-win. Mm. Like I can give someone a reading and they can pay me with cookies. That's still a win-win. Do you know what I mean?
What you mean?
Like both people have to win. Like you have to get a good deal and this person has to get a good deal. Mm. And so I'm very, I say that all the time. Like my kids are like, oh, okay, mom, with your win-win, you know, but it's true. I think that's, more people are looking for that. And also, with the level of technology and convenience that has made us all so lazy and everything's at the tip of our fingers, it's a lot harder in society and in our lives these days to feel real gratitude. Like if you look back at the old days, like is the farmer's tractor broke down and he went to the junkyard and it needed a spark plug and he looked all over all day long, found that exact spark plug and fixed his tractor. That man has more gratitude than I've had in my whole life. Like something with that needs to change.
Yeah.
And I really hope it does, because I want to feel that kind of gratitude. I want to go back to basics and like connect with my neighbors. And like my grandmother used to have the mailman come in and sit and have tea, like mm-hmm. the mailman,
right,
you know,
right.
Like I know my mailman and I say hi to him and he's wonderful, but we need more connection like that, and more, like, I feel like technology takes away from us having that gratitude where it is at, like, it's so convenient and that, and don't get me wrong, I use it too, but it's not giving me gratitude because I didn't have to work for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I want that pure gratitude.
Yeah. And there's ways to increase gratitude mm-hmm. and to grow that.
Yeah.
Because it is,
yeah.
I mean, it is a miracle, you know, we're all here and doing what we do and living this life, and we all,
it's your perception
many times. Yeah. Yeah. So gratitude is
the only way also out of victim mode. Mm-hmm. And people get in victim mode, and the only way out of it, we all fall prey to that, like where, oh, nobody answered their phone and I needed help, and you know, you every single person on earth does that, but the only way out of that is through gratitude. So like you need to, everybody should look at that a little closer.
Yeah. Like, and you know, and count your blessings.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why they say count your blessings.
Exactly.
You should, or I mean, you should, I mean, you do whatever you want, but that is something
you'll feel better.
That will help.
Yeah, you'll feel better. Yeah. And I think the win-win thing is, I want to like bring that in and make it really popular, so that, imagine if everybody felt like that it had to be a win-win. Like, I have the most beautiful neighbors across the street. There's this young couple, right? And the wife brought over this blueberry cake because my boyfriend adores cakes. He's like a dessert freak. And he said it was the best blueberry cake that he ever ate. And I don't bake. I hate baking. Okay. I'm not like let me bake. But I have this empty plate where the cake was. So I'm like, oh my God. So I gave her, I put 2 bracelets in a little present, like and tied a bow and put it on the plate and brought it over to her. And she's like, Jenna. And I'm like, well, I don't bake, but that's a win-win.
Yeah. Well, hey,
Yeah.
your boyfriend liked it.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, he
hey,
loved
you
it.
know.
Yeah. Yeah. And how sweet is she?
Yeah.
Like that. People don't do that. Like, let's have more of her
Yes.
in the world.
I think we can get there.
Yeah.
I think we
I
can
think
get
the
there.
win-win is a good start.
It is, because I think people are starting the priorities of what used to be and the things that people striving for, and yeah, I mean, you got to have money to live and all that, but like this sort of even like obsession with like celebrity and things like that. I feel like it's going like it's not what it once was.
Yeah.
We are
Oh, yeah.
we are much more grounded, I think, compared to like in a sense of like what is real, and really focusing on like what is real, and understanding that even kids going through school and people making decisions as to what they ought to be doing. Oh, no, we don't have to go to a 4-year school and spend $200,000. Maybe go to a trade school, and that's okay now. Or go to community college,
or take a year off,
and just go. Like things like that. And that's just one example.
Yeah.
People, I think, are taking a different approach to it. And it's less about, oh, well, we got to keep up with the Joneses, so and therefore, our kids got to go to Ivy League school, and that's that. It's different now.
Yeah, I honestly don't care if my kids work at McDonald's. Like if they were happy, I just want them to be happy.
Yeah.
And they're already good people. So if they were happy doing that, I support it.
Yeah.
Like whatever makes you happy. If you're happy in your work and you feel good every day, you're going to make a lot of money and have all of your needs fit. I've never gone hungry. Do you know what I mean? And it's not going to be like a job. Like people need to choose themselves and their happiness over this whole charade of appearances and keeping up with the Joneses. I know people with tons of money and they're not happy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, your big mansion doesn't make you happy? No, I'm so miserable. I was happier when I lived in that 2-bedroom apartment, like you'll look back, and some of the happiest times of our lives when we're growing the most is when we had nothing.
Right.
And that's why people always say that, oh, I remember when we first got married and lived in that studio.
Yeah. Always keep growing.
Yeah.
Because the second that you think, oh, I've made it, is maybe that's the death knell, because you really need to keep growing.
Yeah.
And I don't care how big your house is or how impressive it is, and what car you're driving. Like you have to keep doing growth, and that and that could be a million different things, in relationships and professionally, whatever it may be. Yeah, you got to keep going.
Also like learning, you got to keep learning stuff and being excited to learn stuff. And like I know, like the more I learn, the better my readings are, because they have a bigger platform to use signs with. If I only know this much, they can only give me these many signs. But if I know this much, I get way more. Do you know what I mean? So like, and the more the more you can help other people. Like perception is key, because I've had a lot of I don't want to call it dysfunction or betrayal, but I've had a lot of stuff in my path. Like ever since I'm adopted, and like my whole life. I'm not going to go into it because it's long and ridiculous, but all of those things I used to think would happen to me because I wasn't loved or a good person or good enough. But those things were happening to me for the future, so that I would have all those areas to help other people.
Yeah, and I think that's another way out of victimhood, because if you look at things as if it was meant to happen, it was meant to be. And again, people have different worldviews, and maybe they don't accept the fact that it was meant to be. So that's an assumption right there, that somehow there's a plan. But if you can kind of accept that there's a plan, well, there's a reason why you went through that stuff, and that made you stronger, smarter, experience something that not only maybe would help you avoid something like that in the future, but strengthen you so that you're able to do something in the future that you wouldn't have been able to do otherwise without that experience.
That's 100% true. And I think I'm going to push it even further. It's also for that knowledge, like that wisdom, that pearl of wisdom that is going to help the next person. Because you don't have to be like a psychic medium to help people. You can help your neighbor, you can help your friends, you can help your children, you can help your relatives, you can help your workmates, you can help anyone. And by us having these experiences, that knowledge, that pearl, you pass that pearl to another person. And I know in my life, when I've gone through things, I'll think about people and be like, well, she made it through this, so I can make it because I know she had it even worse. Like, that pearl helps people. And I think that's why a lot of our experiences happen. But people have that perception that this is happening because I'm a bad person, or because I'm not good enough, or I'm not loved, or I made all these mistakes. But a mistake is only a mistake if you do it like twice. Like, if you learn from it, it's a pearl.
Yeah. Well, I
So,
mean, is there karma?
mm,
Like, so people may look at things and say, oh, well, this is happening because I'm a quote unquote bad person or something
yeah,
like that. But I mean, is there a piece of that? I mean, that things do come back to you? Is that
I think
maybe,
that's true.
yeah.
I believe in karma. I don't call it karma though. I call it like the natural law of the universe. It's natural law, like God's law.
Yeah.
So what you put out, you're going to get back. So if you're always worried about money, you're going to get money worries.
Yeah.
You're going to have things to worry about.
If you worry about money, you'll continue to worry
But
about money.
it's very, I always tell people, like, you got to trick your mind, but it's really hard to trick your mind out of that worry. But you got to just go, everything's going to be all right. I'm going to have enough, and I trust that. And you will.
Yeah.
I've never gone hungry. Like, I've never not had it. I've lived poor, let me tell you, but I've never not had enough, or had a good friend to help me when I needed it. Like, I really feel like what you put out is what you get back. And I think if you're like a really terrible person, you're going to have some karma to deal with. But I do know this: when someone's like not learning or growing, or can't look at themselves and they blame other people, their karma takes longer to hit them because they've built up way more. So, and
Yeah.
this is the other thing I know: karma, like, say you have an argument with someone and you're like, oh, I hope they get their karma and I want to watch it happen. You're not gonna, because you're gonna hope that, oh, did they get their
It's just
karma
going to come
yet?
back to you.
Because you're mad, right? But they're never gonna get their karma until you don't care.
Yeah.
And at the point where you don't care, they'll get their karma and you'll be like, great, now I don't even care because I'm over it.
Well, that's how it works,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
almost like a piece of that is surrender too, or
Yeah.
something like that. That because being able to let go
Yeah. It's hard.
of things, it is hard. But when you truly, it really is. It's when you don't care anymore,
Yeah.
is when
it hits.
is when it hits.
Yeah.
And that is interesting.
And you know what? When you don't care anymore and it hits, you oftentimes feel really bad for the person.
Yeah.
And you're like, whoa, I never thought I'd feel this way. But
Yeah.
you feel bad.
Yeah.
And it's really none of our business.
Yeah.
Like, it's not.
Right.
It's between them and their karma, and they have to
Yeah.
learn. And hopefully from the karma they learn.
Yeah. And that's what, old sayings, love thy neighbor, love thy enemy.
Yeah.
And
Treat people the way you want to be treated.
It really is. Even
Yeah.
and it's so hard to be able to, like, really think about that, like, treat the people who have treated you poorly, but to be,
With love.
obviously
Kill it with love.
kill it with
Yeah.
love. And yes, you have to demand respect. You have to be respected and things like that. You can't just be rolled over. But there is an approach that is better.
Forgiveness,
and it's hard.
happens. It happens when you're not looking.
Yeah.
That, like, forgiveness is like a balloon, and you walk around, you're so mad, and you want to forgive and you want to release this weight off of you. And then you look and the balloon's still there, and you just keep going and wanting. And one day you're like, oh my God, the balloon's gone. I must have forgiven. I'm okay.
Yeah.
And it's a weight off of you.
Yeah.
It is. It is. I think letting go is the absolute hardest thing to do. You want to, but you just can't consciously do that. It takes time.
Yeah.
And Apache tear and moonstone help with letting go, if anyone wants to know that.
I gotta get some of that.
Yeah, it's amazing stuff. I think that letting go is one of the very hardest things. You're also when you look at things from like a perspective of learning and growing and helping other people, even people that are not nice to you, you can see like above and like why they're like that, and that almost makes you feel for them. And it's not okay to be stepped on or not respected or not treated right. You don't have to confront that. You can just forgive them for yourself, and it's a balloon. It'll happen when it's supposed to.
Yeah.
So. And I don't really have any hate in my heart, like for and I've been wronged a lot, and I don't have any hate because I can see why people do that. I only hope that they learn from it, because like I'm sure I've hurt people, and as long as it's with truth and you're learning, like what else could you ask for, you know?
It's part of the human experience.
Yeah, I really think it is. And I think it's important. It's there's a lot of people out there like I think one of the biggest things of society, at least from people I know and clients and like that kind of stuff, is like the lack of honest communication, because people don't feel safe to tell the truth. And I have to counsel a lot of clients, like men that do damage control, so they don't tell the truth. And then the woman's going crazy because lie energy makes people crazy. And she wants to believe this man, but he's not telling the truth because he doesn't want to hurt her. So that's what I call damage control, you know? And then the woman doesn't hold space for the man to tell the truth. Right. Or vice versa. So like with a lot of clients with the men who do damage control, I'm like, nope, you're doing an injustice here. Like you need to be honest, even though it's going to hurt this girl, it's going to keep her from being in her rightful place with someone who's going to love her. And with the women, like you need to ask him flat out, is this what's going on? And then hold space. And when he tells you the truth, you need to not jump down his throat and attack him. Yeah. Because it's not going to make him be safe with the next woman. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So like there's all that miscommunication, and it's really, if people would just be honest, they'd be able to be loved and feel safe to be themselves, and we'd be happier. But all this stuff is, it's just wasting time. Yeah. That's how I look at it. But I think that each little person that I help with that is actually like it'll click and they'll help the next person. That's what I'm hoping, like a little trickle down, you know. But I see that constantly, like in readings and stuff. And I'm like, wait a minute, there's two people at fault. Everybody has a fault, you know, like, wait, it's not all this person's fault. Yeah. But people have a hard time. And I would love like society and humanity to feel safe, to be as amazing as they are. We put on these fronts to be accepted because we're insecure, and like you notice like they say like the gym goers pumping iron because he doesn't have that strong self-esteem, and he thinks if he has all these muscles like nobody will see that. And do you know what I mean? If people just felt safe with who they are, like let's get rid of all these fronts. Because I'll tell you this, like say this is one of my experiences. I don't know who the guy is, but I'm just going to use one of my experiences. So I go out on a date with someone and I really, really, really like them. Right. So I'm at the table eating a salad. Right. And the guy, he doesn't like me because he can feel that it's like a front. And I'm like, oh my God, this guy doesn't like me. I got to get this guy to like me, you know? And I'm trying to be more of what I think he likes. But he's not going to like it because it's not genuine. And then I have a guy that I go out and I'm eating a cheeseburger and the ketchup's dripping down my chin. And he's like, I'm so in love with you because I'm real. Do you know what I mean? Like, let's just all be real.
Let's be real.
That's the real, not that I eat cheeseburgers and do that, but I'm just giving you an example. Like I'm even guilty of like trying to not be me, trying to be better than me to please someone else. And we need to stop that.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, we're going to connect with the people at the same level as us. And so honesty, be you.
Yeah, and those parts of all of us that we hide, like those quirks and those parts, that's the gold. That's the amazing, unique stuff that like makes us who we are. Like whenever I'm in a relationship with someone, those are the things I like the most about them. Like the things that really you like my pointy little tooth. I'm like, oh my God, it's the cutest pointy little tooth, like whatever it might be.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I just wish that people didn't have these fronts, because even like with I'm glad I'm not dating right now, but in the dating scene, like you have to jump through all these hoops. I mean, it's like a message on the dating site, then maybe a text or a phone call. Then by the time you meet them, like, and they're not being real because they're trying to impress you. Like, it's such a waste of time. Like, let's just be real.
What a nightmare.
I know.
I know. But I'm sure you help a lot of people in that scenario.
Yeah. I try
but
to.
God, dating.
Yeah, it's a lot
today.
of time.
What a nightmare.
I'm not a patient woman. So I'm like, this is who I am. If you like me, great. If you don't like me, you're probably not on my path. And that's how I look at it. I don't take it personally.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's another problem with humanity, is we all take these things personally. And that's like a lesson I learned like over COVID, because I have some family members that I don't speak to because of a betrayal. And I always took it so personally. And I learned not to take that personally, like someone else's hurtful actions. And that released me, and the balloon was gone. You know what I mean? Like we always take things personally.
Yeah.
And we have to stop with that, because people don't like intend to hurt people. People have good hearts and they don't want to hurt people. They just have an issue.
Yeah. And that's maybe that one of the tougher things about growth is that when you grow, some people who were close to you often kind of go away a little bit when you evolve and shift, and sometimes those people are family.
Yeah.
And you just may see them less. Naturally, because
you outgrow them
in that way. And I mean, outgrow them, but even just being different, having a different vibration or whatever it may be. And I think people feel a lot of guilt about that.
Yeah.
But it is okay.
Totally.
It is okay.
It's totally okay. We all have our own ideas and beliefs and opinions, and we all have to respect everyone else's. Like, it may not be the same, but that's their opinion and that's their belief and that's what they think is right. And we have to respect that.
Yeah. Hey, did we miss anything?
Did we miss anything? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
No.
I think we covered a lot of ground.
I think we did. We mix well our energies. I like that.
Yeah. So, well, yeah, we'll make sure we get all your information and the description of the podcast and all that. But we missed the stones a little bit, because you the jewelry.
Yeah, and stones.
But you make those.
Yeah, I do. I make all sorts of necklaces and bracelets and earrings, and I do hand knotted stuff so you can wear it in the shower. I love it. It's like my balance. So I'm creative, so I'll do jewelry and then I do my readings. And then so I have a website for the jewelry and then I do my readings. Like, it's a nice balance.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love them both.
Yeah. And how is that, the day of Amazon and all that, how people just go directly to your website generally, or yeah.
And some people, like, if you're local, you can pick it up at my house. Like, I'll put orders out in my mailbox.
Yeah.
And they just swing by. Like, they can text me the order and they'll swing by and get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's lovely.
It's good stuff.
I love it.
Jenna Reid, man, it's fun. I love talking to you. And you know, you're around, but again, you're worldwide.
Yeah.
So, you know, check out the website and speak with Jenna Reid, and it's an amazing experience. So,
Yeah.
good
Thank you
stuff.
for having me.
You weren't nervous at all.
Yeah, I'm kind of nervous
You,
right
you're
now.
saying
Yeah, I
you're
seriously am.
like, you don't seem nervous. So
I hide it well, right?
good stuff. So, well, we'll be talking to you soon,
Thank you.
and see you down the road.